includes studies like making unplanned purchases. So these are very important implications when we have published this thing. We have got very good response. And like every business industry in the world, so marketing research is very important during the time to understand the mood, behavior, and sentiment of consumers. Like every business industry in the world, the data research and insight sector is being impacted severely by necessary and essential government measures to manage and slow the spread of coronavirus to levels that can be managed by world's health systems. As a sector that depends on the voluntary participation of individuals, the social distancing measures that are being rolled out by an increasing number of countries have a serious impact on the advisability of conducting type of research that require people to be in close physical proximity with each other. There are several concerns. What about impact on survey research? Keep in mind, we focus on online quantitative research. Will response rate vary? More importantly, will there be changes in survey responses because of this? Where are the increase in response rates coming from? There is still to be determined. And more important issues around survey responses, if they will be different because of current situation. These are some issues I can tell that because we have practitioners and academicians, they have done a lot of research, they can tell what are the challenges more better. So before handing over to Professor Naresh Malhotra, I just want to give the speaker profile very brief. Professor Naresh Malhotra and Russell Melk already we have introduced, but just I am reading one or two only about, because if I'll start reading, it will be very difficult to complete. Professor Naresh Malhotra is Senior Fellow, Georgia Tech, Cyber and Regents Professor Emeritus, Cello School of Business, Georgia Institute of Technology, USA. Dr. Malhotra is listed in the published list of the world's top 2% most cited researcher across all disciplines, according to research conducted by Meta Research Innovation Center at Stanford University. In 2010, he was selected as a marketing legend, and his referred journal articles were published in 9 volumes of Sales. He has published more than 140 papers in all the top journals, Journal of Marketing Research, Journal of Consumer Research, so many journals. And most important, his book titled Marketing Research and Applied Orientation was published by Pearson in 2018. This book has been published. Recent edition has come 2018. The book has been translated to Chinese, Spanish, Russian, Portuguese, so many languages. Professor Russell Melk is the Crafts Foods Karana Chair in Marketing, College School of Business. I've just introduced him. He is regarded as the father of qualitative marketing research, co-founder of Association of Consumer Research Film Festival, and has over 550 publications ranging so many journals, all the top journals he has published. Our speaker, Preeti Reddy, the chairwoman of South Asia Insights Division, Kanta. She has over 3 decades of experience in consumer marketing, research, and consulting over a gamut of industry, FMCG, durables, retail, and services. She's a strong proponent of technology-driven innovation in research, adoption of new and unconscious method of understanding consumers, and applying sophisticated analytic capability to integrated data to help transform consumer insights into business impact for clients. Every year for the last, I think 7 to 8 years, she has been chosen from over 500 women professionals among the industry as one of the impacts 50 most influential women professionals in Indian media, marketing, and advertising. Mr. Sandeep Arora. Sandeep is the president of MRSI and executive vice president head consulting and advisory practices Data Metrics. This division is focused on advising the world's leading organizations on business and technology advancements towards traditional as well as digital transformation. His area of focus has been around enhancing collaboration using processes, technology platform, and enterprises data as the key enablers. He is a business manager who hails from a strategic planning and advisory background with over 20 years of international experience. Prior to joining Data Metrics, he worked with organizations such as Mahindra & Mahindra, Times of India, and Nelson. In his earlier role as data metrics, Sandeep has been instrumental in the incubation and growth of data metrics into research and analytics domain, whereby 8 of the top 10 global MR firms are clients of data metrics today. Mr. B.B. Pradeep worked in Unilever till mid-2021 as Vice President of Consumer and Market Insights for America and Europe, and led Global Center of Excellence in Shopping and E-commerce Insights, Market Insight and Predictive Marketing and Shopping Analytics. He served as member of Global Unilever CMEE leadership for last 16 years. Pradeep has been an insight professional and management leader for over 3 decades, having been in global, regional, and country leadership roles, leading insight teams of over 300 CMI professionals across 40 countries. Some of the growth enabling systems he developed and landed across Unilever include predictive growth analytics and good to great communication system, people, voice, consumer centricity program, and many more. He's a regular keynote speaker to so many leading conferences, organizations. Ms. Priyanka Bhargav is the Senior Director, Marketing and Research Head, Flipkart. More than 17 years of brand and consumer research experience across e-commerce, telecom, FMCG, infrastructure, aviation, and government sectors. She worked on market size estimation, media researches, brand track, segmentation, NPS, brand lift. And she is recipient of BTBI Young Business Leader of the Award, February 2019, most influential leader in marketing research in 16, 17, 18, 3 consecutive years. Future woman leader in e-commerce by Unique Business Solution Platform in October 17. And Mr. Mohan Krishnan is very much associated with the center as a governing board member and former senior vice president of Kantar Group. He is among the board of governors, member of CMEE and so many leading organizations. He has his experience in research and consulting industry in the area of technology and marketing issues, and one of the most respected, knowledgeable person in marketing research among the marketing research practitioners. He has advised private and public sector companies, associations, and forums in sectors such as consumer goods, ICT, energy, environmental logistics, automotive, and financial services markets. He has contributed several articles and research papers on a wide range of subjects, spanning from analytical models in running business, regular speaker in conferences on big data analytics. Welcome all the speakers. All are very much renowned. Just I have spoken because there are some media people in this also webinar. So they were very much interested. That's why I have just read, or else there is no necessity of introducing all of you. Mr. Srinivasan, who is our sponsor, State Bank of India. Mr. Srinivasan, Deputy General Manager, he has also joined. Long experience in banking sector. Before I go, just handing over to Professor Malhotra, I just request our Dean, Professor Kaushik Bhattacharya, to give a formal welcome address. Professor Kaushik. Hello. Professor Kaushik, are you here?
Yes. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you. So yeah. I request you to give a brief welcome address.
Okay. 1 minute, please. One minute, there's some problem at my end.
Can you join in mobile?
Yeah, I was experiencing that problem in my computer. But
we are able to hear you. We are able to hear you.
Yeah, okay. Now it is solved.
Okay.
So, respected participants, at the outset, A very good afternoon to you all in this special plenary session, Impact of COVID-19 on Practicing Marketing Research. This plenary session organized by CMEE, and I have no doubt that it will play an important role, particularly in understanding how COVID-19 will make differences in our life. Now, last 2 years onwards, COVID created havoc, as we all know, in all parts of the world. But good thing is, we human beings, we have fought, and now vaccines are available. So even if it creates havoc, we are now much better prepared to deal with it. Now, as far as marketing research is concerned, COVID-19, we hope will help us to understand it in a much better manner. And this plenary session, where people are participating from different parts of the country and outside the country, it will be an important step also. We were sincerely hoping that this session it would be organized in our campus, physically. We are in the process of gradually opening our campus, and already we are having a few programs physically, but conferences, unfortunately, that has to be organized. Things are to be in place much before. Let me just tell you a little bit about our Noida campus. This is almost 20 acres of land in prime area of NCR region. And this campus is where we conduct our senior executive programs, primary. But here also, this campus is also ideally placed for organizing conferences. So I'm hoping that next time when this type of sessions will take place, this session will take place physically in our Noida campus, and we shall be able to welcome you with food, tea and coffees, and we can meet. And conferences, the major things that we miss are what goes outside formal speeches, informally, conducting discussions face-to-face, and in between cups of tea, and sometimes such discussions that can go on hours, depending upon the interests of people. So we hope that this type of situation that will start prevailing now, and it will, this plenary session, that will help us to understand COVID-19, and CME is doing wonderful work regarding this. Okay, so once again, warm welcome to you all, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kaushik.
Yes.
And now I'm handing over the session to Professor Naresh Malhotra and requesting him to chair the session.
Well, a special welcome to all our people in the audience, and of course, a very distinguished panel that we have. And I had put up my PowerPoint slides. I was asked to take them down, so I'm again putting them up. I thank all the panelists, very distinguished panel we have. And I'm going to put up the order of presentation that we have. Unfortunately, our time has been reduced from an hour and 30 minutes to an hour and 5 minutes. So I will request the panelists to kindly take 5 probably 6 to 8 minutes for the presentation, and hopefully then we will have time in the end for question and answers, at least for a few minutes from the audience. I know people do have questions and they would like to hear from the panelists. So as soon as my presentation comes up, which it has. Okay, can everybody see the screen? Satya, can you see my screen?
No, so please share your screen.
Let me just go back and do it again. Okay, and okay.
Now I think the screen has come.
Can you see that now?
Yeah, we can see now.
And you can also hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we are in business then, and the panelists will be focusing on 3 main points of discussion. Do you think marketing research is becoming more important for business decisions during COVID-19? If yes, explain, citing your experience. And all of them are very, very experienced in this regard. How do you think the role of marketing research is changing in emerging business scenario during COVID-19? And what, according to you, are the emerging trends of practicing of which can be better business decision-making during COVID-19? I'm going to take the order in which actually was given to me by Professor Dash. So Professor Russell Belk, you'll be going first, followed by Preeti Reddy, Sandeep Arora, then B.V. Pradeep, Priyanka Bhargav, Mohan Krishnan, Ajay Khanna, Satya, and then finally Mr. Srinivas. And I don't think I'll have to make any comments or something like that because we're really running. Okay.
Only there will be sir, a little change. Mr. Srinivasan will speak in place of Mr. Ajay, and I have nothing to say because I've already given the introduction so that others can spend some time.
Mr. Ajay Khanna is not there?
Yes, he is not here. In place of him,
we'll skip him. I'll skip him, and I'll probably skip you also, and then go to after Mohan. Mr. Srinivas can conclude. Okay. Yeah. So Russ, can you kindly take the platform now?
As soon as I unmute here. Yes, thank you. I don't really have anything in the way of prepared comments, but I'll make some observations. Excuse me. That I was in the middle of a couple of research projects when COVID hit, and in India, and in one of them in particular, we were going into people's homes for depth interviews, doing some still photography as well as videography, and we had several something caught in my throat. Sorry, several additional technology that we brought in. We were measuring the volume of their televisions and their ringtones. And so we had an application on our smartphones that measured the decibel volume of those things relatively unobtrusively. We brought, I guess let me just background this project. We were trying to see what differences there were in basically social class in preferences for strong stimuli versus weak stimuli. That is to say, bright, flashy colors versus muted, more subdued colors. We have to get something to drink here. The smells that were strong versus weak, and spices and sugar in food and so forth, and visual choices in clothing. And so we brought along a little doll that we called Lakshmi, and people had to dress it in some clothes that we brought along. And we went into their wardrobes and observed the clothes that they had and so forth, and filmed the outside of their homes as well as the inside. So at any rate, there were a lot of hands-on stimuli in that case. And so we had to adapt that project to doing basically Zoom interviews. And so we were able to, rather than have a dressed Lakshmi doll, for example, we showed various ensembles of clothing worn by models, and we asked people to talk about them and where they, if they would wear them and where and so forth. We couldn't have fabrics that they could touch, which we had favorably and previously, and we couldn't have smells that they could smell because we so far don't have that on the internet. But what we did find was that the adaptation to largely visual and oral techniques using Zoom was very powerful. And we were able to have people talk, in this case, more uninhibitedly than when we were in their homes, because this was simply an anonymous voice that we were looking at. We had 3 of us doing the research, but we had 2 that were just blacked out, as some of you are, with the name, and just 1 person who was doing the interview who was visual. And then the other 2 came in at the end and did some follow-up sort of work. And we found that technique basically a very opening one, because we didn't overwhelm the consumer initially by all descending upon them in their homes, but we sort of lurked in the background until the basic interview was done and then followed up. Furthermore, we were doing some people a second time that we had interviewed previously in their homes. And so we could talk about changes and have people show us things and have them afterwards snap a photo of
Can I
an
just
outfit.
interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
Professor Dash, would it be okay to remove the PPT? That way we can see Professor Belk in a bit bigger screen. Thank you.
Yeah, I can stop sharing the screen here. So I think that should help.
Yeah, I guess if you put it on speaker view, you'll get a bigger view of each of us. So at any rate, we learned that the visual and oral techniques available on Zoom were quite good. People were used to this by the time we got into doing some of our research. And I guess one other project that has started during COVID is interviewing people with facial disfigurements from acid, from accidents, from congenital things, and so forth. So this is a sensitive topic, and yet it's easier for people to do this talking to a blank screen than it is talking face to face. So that's a technique where we're finding that the visual techniques available on Zoom and comparable platforms are very, I guess it frees up people. It's like talking to someone that's an imaginary person rather than a real person in a sense. And so for that sensitive data, we're also being able to adapt and get that. So I think some of the techniques that we've learned during COVID, like having people using their mobile phones and doing various things for us, we're going to be continuing afterwards. So this is from a couple of projects that I was involved in. There's much more, of course, that people have adapted to in COVID, but I'm sure my colleagues will have much more to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Russ. By the way, are you back home in Canada? Where are you speaking from?
I am. I didn't get trapped anywhere, and I'm just about to start traveling again. I made one trip to the US is about all.
Okay, well, thank you, sir. Preeti?
Yeah, hi. Hi, Professor. Hello, everybody. And good to see some old friends, as we were saying, on this panel as well. I think what the pandemic actually showed us was that like they say, never waste a good crisis, because one of the first thing is that I think the value of market research and the realization of the value of market research has actually gone up through the pandemic. There were periods when we actually couldn't physically do anything. So as Professor Balk was saying, we adapted, we used hybrid methodologies, because the need for information on what the consumer was doing and how consumer behavior was changing was even more heightened during the pandemic. And post the pandemic. In fact, any research agency that you talk to will tell you that last year was the best year ever that they had, because our clients realized that the old playbook doesn't work. So because there were fundamental changes in how consumers were buying, how they were behaving, that they needed to understand. And and what do they expect of my brand? Are we is that our tone of voice, is our content, are our products, are our brands relevant any longer? So we've been doing a lot of very fundamental work of really going back to basics. What has changed also is how we collect the data, and this aggressive digitization that we've had to do was actually a good thing, because we should have done it years back. From the time that the beginning of the pandemic, at least for Kantar, we were some 10% of what we were data collection was through digital means. Now qualitative is almost 100% online, digitized, and uses some really innovative methods of talking to consumers. And our quantitative work is 60 to 70% digitized. And the mobile is very important. It is essentially mobile in India. The other thing that we realized was that when you are in a situation where data collection is almost black, it was a black period. We just could not go to consumers' homes and ask them questions. There's only so much that you can ask them, on a mobile phone or through a telephone call. We realized the value of all the data that we had collected in the years, in the 40, 50 years that we've been in existence for clients. So there's a lot of going back to past data, to secondary data, to integrating that with primary data. And I think clients now have also realized the value of that. So we are still in the primary research business, but we almost invariably first look at, do we really need to collect fresh data? Do we have this data? Is it still relevant? So it's almost a paradigm shift in the way research is done in India, and it's a paradigm shift in the way clients are asking, the questions that they're asking us. What is more relevant is, pricing, portfolio, as I was saying, fundamental needs. Predictive work based on the past is actually less relevant, because the past is less relevant. And the need for speed and agility has been even more heightened. All this was happening, but the pandemic has actually accelerated that move to what we are calling the next normal, not the new normal, but the next normal, because it's going to change again. That's really what I had to say, Professor, Doctor.
Well, thank you, Preeti. Next speaker, Sandeep. Sandeep, by the way, if I heard you correctly, are you in London?
No, Pradeep is in London.
Okay.
I keep traveling. I'm still on the cloud.
Okay.
So,
Sandeep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. So I think I'm going to echo a lot of what Preeti said, and before that, Professor Belk said. There were a lot of things that were already happening. I think it's just that we needed a push, and that push came in through COVID. And we've been talking about this entire paradigm shift for a while. I actually shifted into IT industry from MR, doing MR in 2007, and I could foresee that, that there'd be a time when actually the business of research would actually have more to do with technology than, than any other enablers. So that particular shift was happening, but with COVID coming in, suddenly it has changed the whole pace, and the way people were consuming has gone through the roof. Because of this social distancing and the fact that they could not step out because of lockdowns and all, a lot of things came in digital. They themselves basically became very familiar with digital. Kids attending online classes, not only in towns and cities, but also in villages. So the amount of bandwidth available in different pockets of the country went up tremendously during this particular period of time. And prior to that, this whole initiative started by the government around digitization of various sorts, where everybody should have a bank, actually resulted in a very positive thrust. I don't remember anyone today. I mean, it's very difficult to say who does not use a Google Pay today, So the days of transferring cash or carrying the cash in your wallet, is a day which we think it's still there. I'm not saying it's completely wiped out, but it's drastically shifted to online ways of interacting, transacting, and everything that is happening, pertaining to that. And because of the fact that we had been at home for a long while, a lot of digital media consumption has happened. Media companies have a log of the kind of things we do, we watch, we buy. And therefore, targeting has become that much more simpler on one end, but has a lot more data behind that. The technologies available and the processing powers that are available today are also world-class. You can actually get on a data lake in a matter of hours with AWS S3. You just have to sign up, use your swipe your card, and there you are. You have a data lake for yourself where you could actually start streaming live data, storing live data, processing, democratizing, whatever you really want. Actually, the days when you really had to have a huge, planning for hardware, software, this and that has all gone throughout. And the fact that we no longer live on perpetual licenses anymore as a matter of deals, everything has become pay as you go. Everything has become almost real time in whatever way we're doing. So therefore, not only the need has become more pronounced, the way to reach there has also become much more simpler. Said that, have we really reached there? And what's stopping us from getting there? So MRSI very recently came up with an industry report where we said the Indian research and insights industry is about $2.5 billion, and a lot of what we do actually ends up getting exported. Close to 74% of total earnings of Indian research and insights industry is delivered to users outside of India. So the way it is emerging and the way it is getting consumed and the way it is being delivered is going through a drastic change. Having said, as I said, so one of the key bottlenecks I personally feel, actually there are two that I feel that are coming in our way of getting there. One is fundamentally the kind of resources we have, the kind of people who know how to sort of do the work in this new digital age. So it's not only the things that have to change. It's not only the consumer that's sort of changed. We also have to change, and our skill sets have to change. A researcher no longer is expected to write recommendations coming out of primary research. He should be business focused, data analyzable, kind of a data scientist who is able to spot trends and plot out patterns, and therefore get into the descriptive, prescriptive, diagnostic, all kinds of analytics these days, and try to see as to can we basically see what is there basis historical data and avoid any mishaps because we have that additional information which we didn't have earlier, right? So resources and the skill of resources is one of the key bottlenecks. The other key bottleneck I feel is this whole protocols around data privacy. So while everybody has gone digital and everybody is sort of trying to see how they can be more digital native than what's there, the protocols are still evolving. I'm not sure if you're aware, but in India, the GDPR lookalike, we have something known as PDP bill, private data protection bill, personal data protection bill, sorry, my bad, which is still in a bill stage. It is yet to evolve into an act. We are still referring to the IT Act of 2000 to sort of safeguard our cyber crime interests. But there is nothing that is sort of keeping tab of what is data privacy and how do we sort of really look at that. As a matter of fact, we have actually moved one step where we are not only looking at personal data protection, we are in the process of drafting another bill, which handles in non-personal data protection. So anything which is not personal or is aggregated actually comes under non-personal data protection. And the ownership of that particular data is really one of the key fundamentals, which is driving the engagement models of how various kinds of businesses need to sort of function. The challenge for market research right now is the fact that we, who are supposed to be data collectors, are being clubbed in the same bucket as banks and telecom companies and various others under the definition of broad definition of data collectors. So there is a kind of a compliance that has been expected from data collectors to sort of live with, which has its own set of processes, costs, etc., associated with that, which I feel is sort of coming in the way. So anyways, I think these are some of the challenges, but you can read more of that in this, this whole Indian research and industry sort of guide. It sort of indicates the kind of growth rates we are seeing, kind of segments we have, etc. And I think it would be really worthwhile for you to get a much better idea about our own industry. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sandeep. Next speaker, Pradeep. Kindly take the platform.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Malhotra. Nice to meet you as well. And thanks to my to Satya and great meeting all the panelists, and thanks to the audience as well for giving us some time to talk to you. Basically, the way I'll approach this is from my role as the Global Vice President for Consumer Market Insight, looking after about 40 countries for the Unilever business as a whole. It's a very different standpoint. And when COVID happened, it was like a tsunami for the business. A tsunami hit the business. So everything was rewritten. All the rules were rewritten. So one of the things as consumer market research and insight professionals, we all know that we are very a curious bunch of people. We want to understand what consumers think, what consumers do, why do they do that, what are their needs and motivations, because that's the fundamental thing which drives categories, drives brands. So that's our bread and butter. When COVID happened, the first thing was, it was inconceivable for us 2 years ago, March, exactly this time when we were discussing it. We couldn't even imagine what all dimensions it's going to impact. And while at a broad level, if you look at COVID was a disaster as far as the humanitarian crisis it created and the amount of trauma that people went through with all the suffering and loss of lives. But from a market research perspective, it was something like a dramatic global behavior change experiment, because everything had changed within few weeks. Everything about consumers, things which would take years to change, was changing. And so one had to literally, as Preeti was saying, had to rewrite all the learnings which you had in the past. Anything which you had done as habits and attitude studies, anything which you had done on consumer need states were all turned topsy-turvy. So where do we start? And we needed to act because the business was suddenly in a crisis when retail stores started shutting down and factory production lines had to be changed. So they were asking, what should we produce? How much should we produce? Where should we produce? And how do we sell this? So every question conceivably was on the table. And two things happened in this case. The business leaders fell into two groups. One set of business leaders were feeling that it's too much of change too fast. So I don't think research, we have time for research. We just have to act. The second group, which was luckily the more saner and the larger group, was that we need to use consumer insights and research more and more efficiently and more effectively at speed. So this became a critical business priority and unimaginable because, Unilever works, we have categories in foods, beverages, home and personal care, home care and personal care. But I've never seen in my 3 decades of working growth rates which are so varied. Normally categories grow within a certain range because it's all based on GDP growth, population evolution, etc. But here I saw numbers like categories, some of them were wiped out. They became minus 100%. They were just not there. Whereas there were categories which were growing at 1000%. So the whole business was, some of these categories were flying, some of the categories were dying. And so the question was always about how do you manage this situation? And we had to shift gears, we had to move resources. To give you a sense of it, for example, our foods business, the retail food business started growing enormously because everybody had stopped eating at restaurants. There were no restaurants, everything was closed. So they had to cook at home. Suddenly we had to understand what are they cooking? What is it that they need? What changes can we make? If you look at personal wash categories and disinfection and home care, they started growing very rapidly because everybody was petrified about COVID infection coming to their house, their family, and themselves. But there were other set of categories, which was in the beauty and personal care categories like deodorants, etc., shampoos, cosmetics, where people felt, I'm anyway not going out, I'm in lockdown. Why the hell should I bother about dressing myself up and making myself look pretty? So they all started stalling. And so this was, and that's as far as the categories concerned. And then we saw this whole shift towards e-com, which Sandeep and Preeti were referring to, and it was massive. And we had even senior consumers who had never used a mobile or this thing for shopping started using it because there was no other alternative. And digital, suddenly we felt that our whole life, the business had turned from being real to virtual, and everything had to be done virtually. And so it was initially a traumatic one, but soon we had to get on top of this. And interestingly, when we were doing this, we saw some of the sales of T-shirts and tops were going up while nobody was buying trousers because everybody is on some video meetings, video calls. So nobody sees what you're wearing on the trousers. So people actually joked about wearing shorts, or probably, hopefully they were wearing something when they were talking on video meetings, apart from the coat they were wearing on top. So it was very funny how things were shaping up. And for me, my expertise is also in the area of behavior change and market development, creation of categories. And we had, as you all know, Lifebuoy is our global brand, which is in personal wash. And one of the social missions of Lifebuoy is to inculcate hand wash habits amongst children. And we had spent 10 years going to about 1 billion consumers through school programs, etc., to bring about this behavior change. And COVID happened, and within weeks, the whole world was washing its hands like nobody's business. And that's the kind of behavior change which COVID brought about. And this is just one of the categories. So one of the things that struck us was, is this permanent change? Is it a temporary change which you need to adjust and they will come back? So we are still in the process of figuring out. Some of them may be permanent. Some of them may be a step different. We are somewhere, as Preeti said, new normal or next normal. And so I think this is a fertile area for research people, insight people. This is constantly stimulating your mind. And so the demand for research has only gone up. Insight professions are in this thing. But coming to the question on the role of market research, how is it changing in the emerging business? There are 6 key trends I see. The first one was more focus on foresight than hindsight. People said, forget the past data. You can't extrapolate anything based on that. Let's go for looking at what it will be in the future, foresight. Second one was integration with marketing and the business as a whole increased dramatically. There was no time for reading a report and all that. So the research person has to be in the meeting, should be inputting into shaping the decisions, because the decisions were happening very fast and had to be implemented within days and weeks. There was always a focus on immediate trends. And in fact, we used to joke, long-term means 3 months. nowadays. So that's the kind of thing, because nobody looked at anything, what will be in 5 years, nothing. You have to survive now to be there 2 years from now. Yeah, so we had to support the business. Then doing survey-based research suddenly shifted towards how can we harness the digital and social data already available. So we have a people data center which really ramped up dramatically in order to support, because consumers have already said what they wanted to say. There's lots of behaviors there. You don't have to ask a question to get an answer. You can always do that. And then there was a strong integration of data analytics and survey-based panel data, because people want a single version of the truth. You can't say, oh, panel says this, research says that, social data says this. People say, come on, give me one answer. What the hell is happening? Yeah. So, and then of course, with all this, the cost pressure was immense. So we had to be cost effective. So you can imagine all these things in an emerging business threw us completely into a 24/7 working mode. And we were working like most of the people are ass off in a way. There was no sleep time, nothing. You had to, because the business had to survive this trauma. In terms of the question about emerging trends for market research to help better decision making, again, I have 6 points to make. The first one is prediction models based on cause effect are here forever. Now, we used to have the category growth forecast model, which served us for 10 years. And February 2020, when we were looking at this trend emerging, we suddenly knew that that model would not work. It was based on past trends and a build up on that. And we had to re-engineer build a whole new model, which is based on some 20, 30 plus variables on how do we predict category growth, which include a lot of COVID-related variables. Second one is tracking consumer behavior is super critical, because while mind is okay, but people are not thinking. It's a fast world and things are changing. So you need to observe what people are doing. So a lot of work which we started doing was, even in survey-based, we started looking at what are consumers doing today, what are they likely to do tomorrow. Then there was speed versus the essence. So information has to be faster. So you can't get all the information, but you need to be sharp focused on what is it really needed for decision making. So we had to make choices and accelerate those data faster to the managers. In all this, one of the things, while research professionals, we want to give all the consumer insights, getting managers to meet with consumers regularly, now that virtual connections are possible, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's Skype, whether it is Zoom, meeting consumers, all the people in the company is so critical, because their insights come from anybody. And then in terms of analytics, one of the things I spearheaded within Unilever just before I moved out was the whole thing of how do you put analytics into the hands of business users. Analytics has always been an expert thing. They come and make presentations. They say, this is what you should do. We need to move from there. And we developed some tools along with Kantar, actually working with Kantar, where it's senior management can do some of the decisions themselves, simulations themselves. So it's all in the hands of the user. And the last thing I would say is there is a strong push COVID has brought in to integrate tools. If you have to move, let me give you an idea of one of the things which we did. If we have to do a concept, you start with trends. Okay, look at or distill all the trends, and based on the trends, you create some brilliant ideas. From the ideas, you sort some and then create some concepts, and then you test the concept to see whether it is potential, right? Those cycles used to take months. And we have now tools which can, with using AI and machine learning, which can look at the trends, create the ideas, create the concepts itself. It will test on online on panels, and then feed it back to say that these are the 6 concepts which are, and this takes about a few weeks, the whole end-to-end process. And this is the kind of dramatic change that COVID has pushed us into and make us think very, very differently. So there is a whole lot of the bad things which COVID did, but I think from an insight research perspective, it's brought in a whole lot of change and a lot of exciting work and integration work, from marketing to market research to data and analytics. On the tech side, which Sandeep was talking about, are all getting integrated into one melting pot. And so that's where the excitement lies for us. That's all I had to say. Over to you, Professor.
Okay, thank you, Pradeep, for those insights, and enjoy your stay in London. Next speaker, Priyanka.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Very excited to be here. I'm Priyanka Bhargav. And I think I concur with everything that has been spoken by my co-panelist. What I will try and do is, it's a good segue in terms of what Pradeep mentioned, which is talking about some of the challenges that the offline world experienced, and therefore assessing and ascertaining the demand and supply in an environment, in a black swan event like COVID, and with the accelerated and differentiated consumer behavior. How did we, at an e-commerce vantage point, did we look at, and what were some of the challenges that we were facing? While it is obviously now a known fact that while there were a lot of other businesses which suffered owing to offline closing, retail closing down, etc., etc., e-commerce itself had grown. It is public domain knowledge, almost about 30 to 40% growth, which was seen by the e-commerce players. However, having said that, there were a lot of challenges, and some of those challenges were actually sorted by a lot of e-commerce consumer inciting work, which was done within the e-commerce space. So let me try and give you a quick overview of the landscape and how the country evolved and accelerated into differentiated consumer behavior. As per CY21 number, the active internet user funnel is about 700 million consumers are accessing internet via mobile. Of that 700 million, almost close to about 180 to 200 million consumers are shopping for products online. So between the two numbers, as you can see, there is quite a widened gap which exists between our parlance, as we call it, that AIU number, which is active internet user base, which stands at 700 million, and acquired consumers onto e-tail is almost about 200 million in the country. So that's a huge gap of about 500 million, right? And therefore, we wanted to understand that as the e-commerce adoption and digital adoption has accelerated during COVID, we wanted to take some learnings from the global markets as well and see how India will shape up. And therefore, in order to continue the business continuity plan, as we call it, what are some of the consumer insights that we will have to plug in on the go? There is no time for 3 months, 2 months, 1 month analysis. It is exactly what Pradeep mentioned, that consumer insights professional, data analytics professional were pulled into the meetings 24/7. There was no time to do research and come back. So therefore, on the go, what we realized is there's some learning coming in from China. As per our research, we found that China is about 11 years ahead of India when it comes to e-commerce. Having said that, it means that there was a lot of learning for us to really imbibe and bake in terms of what has happened in China 11 years back, when there was a huge gap between the AIU numbers, which is people who are using internet in the country, minus the people who were actually purchasing a lot of e-commerce. Having said that, when we were overlaying that piece of insight onto our country, because obviously China and India, in fact, this was another insight that we shared, that India need not necessarily copy, ape, or follow some of the trends which are happening in China. India, in terms of the consumer behavior, is a lot more closer to its Southeast Asian neighbors. And therefore, we realized with all of these changes in the ecosystem, there was an upsurge in the investments which were happening in the ecosystem. You would realize that, between social media and chat players, there was upstream engagement via social platforms which started to happen, whether it was through WhatsApp or Facebook or Instagram, and some of the newer players, which I am not part of, but I see a lot of the youth being part of, which is Moj, Takatak, TikTok, which obviously closed down, but obviously it was a huge platform, Josh, so on and so forth. What we realized is, as from the social commerce and the media and chat ecosystem, we realized that there was a lot of investment which was happening in the country during the years of 2020 and 21 in the product shopping behavior. For example, Bulbul, Same, City Mall, DealShare, Meesho. There were a lot of these companies which were getting fresh funding and investment. So why am I even talking about some of these brands? I'm talking about some of these changes in the ecosystem. It means that it only showed and reflected that there was an emerging consumer behavior, which was reflecting that there was huge digital adoption, which was happening in the country. And I will share some of the numbers that we also tracked through COVID in terms of the changing consumer behavior. But what we realized was that as e-commerce was evolving in the country, there was a divergent need between the entrenched shoppers. So we are all aware of the differences which exist in the consumer behavior between India and Bharat. But apart from those dimensions, there were newer dimensions which were emerging, which is the entrenched e-commerce shoppers. How are they differently behaving from a new e-commerce shoppers? A parlance that is very common in our lingo is the N400 million, which is these are consumers who are first-time users of e-commerce. And we realize that some of their barriers to adoption to e-commerce were very, very different. They were more driven by the lack of trust and therefore quality, and therefore assurance of trust and quality was extremely important. We realized that as the unemployment rate was going up in the country, value became a very critical need, and therefore the companies such as, sorry, was there a question? All right. Value became a very critical need, and therefore availability of the affordability options. So as a result, with all of these changes in the consumer behavior, we realized that the innovation had to be at the heart of everything, not only at the heart of business continuity, but also at the heart of consumer research itself. One of the key findings of a consumer research at that point in time was that as COVID accelerated the e-com adoption, there was a 30% higher wallet share that we saw from the existing consumer base. Almost about 20% of the existing e-commerce consumers started to explore purchasing into newer categories. I'm sure many of us pre-COVID were not purchasing our groceries online. We were not playing the kind of games that we were playing prior to COVID, etc., so on and so forth. We saw 15% new customers coming on board into e-commerce. We found that the consumer behavior itself was changing. And in fact, I will share a document after our chat, which will talk about how different consumer segments emerged. Finally, I'd like to talk about some 6 different insights that emerged through the very fast-paced consumer inciting work that we were doing. One is the savings mindset was emerging very fast. While grocery was always considered to be an essential, we realized mobile, electronics, they became extremely essential during this pandemic season, purely because there was a pent-up demand for a lot of electronics, larger appliances, because people were spending a lot more time on the digital ecosystem. Second, preference for value accentuated with people losing their jobs, or there was a reduction in their salaries, etc. They were taking pay cuts, or of the 2 people who were income earners, one of them lost their job, so on and so forth. We realized that value therefore become very, very accentuated in the consumer behavior. Third, there was a higher digital adoption, and maybe if I can quote a number, we realized that there was a preference for online related to e-groceries, entertainment, education, telemedicines, home delivery of even alcohol being the latest in the bandwagon. We realized 40 to about 60% of these consumers who were getting onto this bandwagon of adopting newer technologies, these consumers had picked up these new tech digital solutions, and almost half of them intended to continue. And in fact, we are seeing that these habits are here to stay. Fourth, with increasing digital adoption, we also found that 30% increase in human digital minutes per day led up to about 300 minutes per day a human was now spending, whether it was related to gaming, video, OTT, short video. Let me just share a very interesting data point that we came across, which is in terms of the increase in the downloads. I'm referring to some numbers here. There was a 391% increase in downloads for games like Ludo King, 182% increment in the downloads for games like Carrom Pool, 175% increase in the downloads for OTT platform like Netflix, 122% for Prime Video, so on and so forth. The list is endless. Fifth, we found that the in-home consumption has gone up, and therefore we had to find newer opportunities, newer areas to be able to understand these consumer behaviors, because people were getting into edtech, telemedicine, etc. And in fact, if you have been abreast of some of the newer trends from Flipkart, we ourselves have gotten into launching Flipkart Health Plus. And finally, I am sure you cannot go amiss in terms of the kind of marketing activities which have been going on in the hyperlocal O2O newer business models which have emerged in the country, which have increased the customer expectation on dialing up speed from 90 minutes to 35 minutes to now 10 minutes, right? So there has been an acceleration of hyperlocal and omni-channel models. Now, with all of these changes in the consumer behavior, obviously there has to be a great speed at which the consumer insights had to move. And that was really the final ask and the expectation which we took on as part of the consumer insights team at Flipkart. I have some closing remarks in terms of what are some of the emerging trends in the marketing research that we also try to develop at our end, but maybe I can reserve that towards the latter part of this conversation. Over to you, Dr. Naresh.
Well, thank you, Priyanka, for those insightful comments. Mohan, you're next, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And hello to all. I am not going to add too much. Maybe I'll just share because, I concur with a lot of things shared before. I just want to plug in an IIM Lucknow study that we did around COVID, which Professor Dash had spoken about. Just to sort of add on to what Priyanka had stated just now. As we found, we did this research in 2 waves, around the lockdown and after the lockdown, before the second wave started. And we wanted to see consumer behavior changes that have happened. And as Professor Das has said, there were 2 clear dominant behavior that were visible. One was the approach coping. In the early stages of the lockdown, a lot of us thought, consumers are sitting at home, they are sort of doing all the nice things, cooking food, being healthy, wanting to be good, and so on. And lots of people were sharing their cooking ideas and so on. It was a fascinating time. But very soon it became apparent that, the stress was getting tedious for them. And people started doing a whole lot of avoidance coping, and which was clearly visible in many of the impulse purchases were visible, and that you could see, that Priyanka was speaking about gains in terms of growth, online purchases, alcohol consumption. We thought that the government should sort of not become a nanny state and allow many of these things to happen. Instead of, in India, they sort of locked up these things for a long time until the pressure built up. Then there were other kind of risk behavior we saw, like, investment in risky assets like stocks, instead of, only insurance and so on. So these were some of the, disruptive behavior that we could see. And even, later we saw cryptocurrencies, booming and growing because of this whole lockdown effect, and the stress building in terms of finances. So clearly an avoidance behavior, is something equally consumers cannot escape, especially when they are in high stress. And there are industries that exploited them. We saw the growth of, all these so-called game of skills that grew, in the gaming area. So this was one major bucket. As far as research is concerned, we have seen high growth of, the online research method that Preeti spoke about and Sandeep also spoke about. But what I did find from some of the work that we did in terms of collecting data, while the high income group access became more easy, they were available online and we were able to collect data. But the low income data quality became even worse, and it was getting to be difficult. And I really don't know to what extent has it recovered post-COVID now as far as the low income data. On qualitative research, I think ethnography, despite, I will talk about some of the interesting studies that we did, where the qualitative research had introduced new angles, but the traditional methods, which had certain advantages of visiting homes and getting a more 360-degree perspective, those things sort of went down. We were unable to conduct groups beyond 3 to 4 people. Getting 8-9 people online was almost impossible, not in terms of logistics, but it was difficult to conduct Zoom calls online. So these were some of the experiences. Now, coming to some learnings that I had from researchers. I just wanted to talk from one extreme interesting research to the other end, and I wanted to sort of bring out some trends from that. One was a research that I did for broadband players around gamers. Now, interestingly, while the study was segmenting, markets of broadband users simply because the usage of broadband exploded, I was able to learn a lot about, these gamers who are office workers, their behavior online, office behavior as well as their gaming behavior, as well as their, because of the fact that they're sitting at home and they've been unable to invest their money on any other things, or probably they're saving on parties and so on. So the amount of accessories that boomed in these gaming, community, the kind of products that they were buying and they were using, and also the, the new methods they were adopting for work, I feel this is a segment that probably will indicate how the metaverse will grow, therefore what marketers will have to do. They were an interesting segment to study. Globally, I think there is a great convergence in the way the digital natives or these gamers are behaving. And especially the way they work and play is interesting to sort of learn from. So that was an interesting qualitative study. It gives us a window into how the future of consumers probably is going to be. And this also tells you why many are reluctant to come back to the workplace, why they are sort of beginning to adopt new lifestyles and wanting to work in companies and not willing to work, go back to workplaces or report to bosses and so on. So there is something that we could learn, although the study was largely about catering to the specialized need of gamers, especially because broadband needs a much faster response. That was one interesting learning, and I feel it's a worthwhile segment to study sociologically for most of our future researchers. The other thing, I worked a lot with government, whether it is skilling. In India, we have a skills commission, and therefore there's a whole lot of skills deployment or training that were happening. And I was working with one state government. Therefore there was a great pressure to bring all kinds of data online. And while you bring all kinds of data online, and one of the problem was, how do we get feedback from these users? Because students are not coming to the campus, you still need to do a lot of other things. So from one end, where there were a pressure on the government department in terms of deployment of program, on the other hand, there was a boom in growth. For example, I was doing some work for Aadhaar. The number of customer calls had grown, multiple times. In a month, they were getting 25 lakh calls and higher. And therefore, there was a great need from one end, where people were literally moving online and reaching their service provider. On the other hand, there is the whole disruption. So this required not just trying to understand whatever we can from the passive data that was getting accumulated, but also finding ways to get feedback. This was something many companies had not focused on. So we had to sort of quickly deploy surveys to reach these students in whichever way we could, trying to get, if it is SMS or so, multiple platforms to get whatever feedback we could get to respond to. And also incentivizing customers, especially, I was helping D2C brands. These are small brands, therefore using social media channels that they had not really built earlier, because they thought those are not being effective, had become even more effective. And therefore there was a need to sort of get feedback and use that feedback, because any other method was turning out to be not timely or getting to be costly. The last piece that I wanted to share that I found interestingly is many of these companies that sort of boomed during this COVID time, especially the D2C brands, had to find high frequency data, as the government calls it nowadays, because most of their other data was getting unreliable. So high frequency data like search engine information or any other pieces of information that you can sort of collect from online, which are proxies to sort of understand what your customers are doing, had to be sort of identified, put into the system to collect and analyze. So for example, dry fruits in India grew, quite significantly during this period. So there were lots of, proxy data that had to be sort of put in place to understand which segments, which markets, what is happening, therefore where we can target to sort of sell the products. So these were the interesting things that I could find. More recently, all this is sort of leading to greater amount of interest in marketers to conduct researchers. So as Preeti said, habit changing researchers, what is the impact of that has grown. And last week I saw Bureau of Indian Standard wanting to develop standard for India for market research. They contacted me, so I thought I should sort of mention it, so you could see, if Indian Bureau is interested in putting standards, good or bad, I don't know, but whatever it is, it seems that Government of India is also seeing, a need to, negatively put it as, regulate business services, or seeing a need to sort of encourage business services with positive standards. And that's all I have to share right now.
Well, thank you, Mohan. And our final speaker will be Srinivas. So you have the platform, sir.
Yes, sir. Good evening to all, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to such a august audience. To start with, I would like to give a brief introduction of myself. I am heading Digital and Transaction Bank for State Bank of India in the state of Uttar Pradesh, and I stay in and I am operating from Lucknow. Unlike others, I am not into the market research, but I am an end user mostly. So I'm interacting with most of the consumers who are our customers, in fact. So just to start by things, actually, one of the biggest things happened to us also is the leapfrogging of the technology adoption. We at State Bank of India really adopted technology due to the COVID pandemic. That has actually leapfrogged. What we would have been doing after 5 years, we've done in 2019 and 20 and 21. So all these things, what happened is that not only from the security point of view, we also went into the office productivity tools. So this availability of office productivity tools have really changed the technology sense of the staff. For me, the biggest change, what I noticed in the consumer behavior or the staff behavior is that market research has become more socialized. Earlier, market research used to happen at the top end. Somebody used to direct the market research. But now everybody is able to do the market research on their own. I'll just tell one instance, in fact. Last year, we had a higher number of accounts got closed with us, current accounts. So we want to do a survey. So the standard protocol is that you have to approach your IT team, you have to make a portal, you have to make it available to all the branches and get a feedback. But thanks to some of the tools which have been deployed now, so operating staff could able to manage, put up a beautiful Power App on the Microsoft Power Platform. So all the branch managers, all the counter staff has got that mobile Power App, and they all completed the survey within no time, which otherwise would have taken much more longer time. Immediately, within 15 days, we got the feedback why the accounts are closed. And surprisingly, we realized that on account of business stress and higher number of people falling sick, the account got closed. So the results were in corroboration with the actual data outside. This is only possible because because we could able to do it at a quick time. Had it been taken a long time following the standard protocols, the result would have been redundant. The second thing is, previously we used to drive a lot of for accomplishing the budgets of our branch managers for giving the personal loans. Earlier, the standard practice is we used to take the list of salary accounts and give it to them with the mobile numbers. They used to call them, and whosoever success rate used to be there. But what we thought is that, see, they now on account of digitization, huge data points are there at our disposal. So let us say not the routine calling, we'll do one thing. Whosoever has withdrawn the fixed deposits in the last 2 months, let us see. So immediately we got the data. So the hit rate went up. So not only the data collection, earlier we used to collect the data to various modes. Now there's the data is readily available with us. That is one of the major changes. And this entire research has shifted to the downwards. There is a platform called Power Apps. If I open that thing, I can see hundreds of apps today. 2 years back, nobody was using that. Even though bank has a license to use it, nobody is using it. Lot of forms. Suppose today customer want to again close the account. We are just sending them a Microsoft form. They'll fill it and give it back to us. No time. So this is one of the major changes what I'm seeing. But this is possible only on account of increased protocols also. Earlier, suppose the customer data can be easily freely exchanged. But now suppose if I'm going to send some data, customer data, my email will be blocked. So that kind of security infrastructure also came in, which made us to make the data available to everyone possible. Without security protocols, we can't socialize the data. So security protocols is another great infrastructure which kick in. So this is what we want to say, sir. So my take is that the market research for us gone to it's got socialized. So that is what the take from my side.
Well, thank you very much for those comments, insightful ones. If I could just summarize in a few sentences of what all the panelists have said, it is clear that whenever there is a change imposed taking place, whether it's external as imposed by COVID-19 or internal, marketing research becomes more and more important, because in order to survive, leave alone thrive, organizations have to first understand the change, then they have to predict the change, how it's going to evolve, and then capitalize upon that change by formulating effective marketing strategies. And here's why marketing research becomes more and more important. And I personally feel that in this, during the time of this COVID-19, marketing research has delivered. It's proved its value. There are some skeptics out there who wonder whether it's worth undertaking marketing research. And I think that marketing research as a discipline has delivered and proven its value, that how it can help companies navigate during uncertain and difficult times. So with that said, we have a few minutes left. I want to open the floor to the audience for questions, comments. Please feel free to share your comments. And if you have any questions, if you want to direct them to any specific panelists, please name the panelists to whom the question is being addressed. And if not, you can just ask your question, and I'm sure one of the panelists will respond, or I will call upon one or some of them to respond. So with that, the floor is open to the audience. Any
can I ask a question?
Comments? Yes, please, Samita.
Yes, sir. This is Smita from Symbiosis, sir. We are currently looking at, bettering our placements for our students post the COVID. And since there are so many senior people from research organizations also here, I would like to ask them that, what level of readiness do you expect from MBA students when you hire them in your organizations for research?
Okay, Sandeep, you want to respond to that?
Sure, I could do that. So we are more of a digital research agency because we are technology native in a way. So the kind of things that we would expect people to have is a fair amount of analytical aptitude, along with some bit of familiarity with different things that are happening in the market, like being able to understand secondary data sources, understand how to connect different types of dots, understand how one can actually look at different aspects and be able to sort of, so there is this kind of quality, which is what is an MBA like, which is how do you sort of make sense of something which is more exploratory, is what I personally look for, apart from the fact the person has to be curious and other things. But in this new age, that's the change that we're looking for. The person is no longer just needs to be a researcher.
Priyanka, you want to add to that?
Yes, absolutely. So I think a very interesting question, Smita. I feel the clarion call for market researchers is to really institutionalize the newer digital and the phygital ecosystem. And considering that Gen Z is coming into the corporate world, what we expect from them is absolutely fresh thinking, how to relook at doing consumer research, marketing research in an environment which is native to those consumers. So emergence of newer technologies, which could be your, they got to be a little more comfortable in conducting these researches in those ecosystems because they are digital natives, unlike others who are digital migrants. Along with that, I feel where the researchers can really lead with an edge is also some basic level of business understanding along with data centricity. Yeah.
Okay, we can take up the next question, please.
Well, I have a question. Okay.
No, there's a question on the chat window also, sir. You can probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me take the question from this gentleman who wanted to speak, and then we can take that.
Sure.
Hi, this is Vikram. I'm from Market Excel. So it was wonderful to listen to all the participants, especially the impact of this Black Swan event on the consumers' adoption of technology and how they are leveraging e-commerce. But my question is that, as we open up or as we are getting back to what it was, before the pandemic. So what challenge do you anticipate from the other side of the table or the channels which are working extremely hard to draw consumers towards them? And Priyanka, if you can answer that question, because you are from Flipkart. So I'm sure a lot of retail chains are already thinking through on how to get their consumers back. So I think it's going to be an open ground. And what challenges do you foresee? Because a lot of adoption was out of the distress, right? Groceries could only be bought online, so I had no option but to order them online. If kids have to attend online classes, there is no option but to buy a laptop online. But now given the choice, and we are seeing a lot of pent-up demand in some of the categories, auto being the foremost. So what challenges do you anticipate now?
Yeah, Vikram, interesting one. So if you would remember, I had quoted a number, which is while there was a lot of uptake in terms of the newer digital adoption in the industry, as per our understanding and assessment of the scenario, close to about 40% of these consumers will continue with these new change habits. So whether it is buying groceries online, or it is about the ed tech or the pharma tech, etc., so on and so forth. Having said that, yes, you're absolutely right. The e-commerce or the digital or tech-first organizations also need to gear up that e-commerce, for that matter, becomes a habit to the consumer and not just like a stopgap arrangement when the offline retail was closed. So in fact, if you follow a lot of these new features which get introduced from the house of a lot of e-commerce companies, whether it is voice and vernac related researches or image searches which happen, new features like community and group buying are being introduced. Social re-commerce became extremely important through the year 2021, and Shopsy, which is another brand from the house of Flipkart, is a phenomenal success in that aspect, wherein you purchase it from somebody who you have trust in, and that somebody or that reseller is actually sourcing the catalog from Flipkart or Shopsy in this case. Also, there are various aspects which are related to gamification, live and video streaming, referrals, NFT properties, which are your non-fungible tokens, etc., hyperlocal businesses, so on and so forth. So basically, the point that I'm trying to make is that we are also gearing up to introduce, in fact, a lot of these features that I've spoken of have already been introduced. And what we are trying now, attempting to do, is habituate the consumers to these features and make e-commerce or online shopping easier for the consumer. As I see, e-commerce, online shopping, and offline shopping will continue to peacefully coexist. And that is how it is going to be, as we have seen the trends in the other developed markets, as well as in the emerging economies now. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. I have a question on chat, and this is from, let me get the name of that person here, from Lindsay Matthew. How can academia and corporates engage to create market-ready graduates? So I'll request you, Preeti, if you can kindly get us an answer to that, and then maybe Professor Dash, you can add to whatever Preeti has to say.
Well, I think this question, doctors asked every year, and we say that corporates and academia have to first engage a lot more than they do right now. One way of doing that is through internships and through some kind of mentoring programs. The internships that we do right now, I think, are short, and they're for a year, for a month or so. I think we need to formulate programs where there is more frequent and more more in-depth kind of engagement between the two. The other is what Mohan and many of people like Mohan do a lot of, which is if industry can be more involved in actually teaching in courses, I think it will help, because it would be a good way of bringing practical application to the to academia. I kind of answer this question every year, and then we come back and we find that we haven't done much about it. So really, I think maybe if we can start in a small way and pilot it. Mohan does a lot of it. We should more of us should do that.
I completely agree with your comments. Satya, you want to add anything?
To add one thing, it's a very good announcement today UGC has made that there is no PhD requirement for academic institutes, because now that more realization has been taken place, there is a lot of requirement of practitioners in academic institutes, because they bring the real world scenario to the academic business school. Also, we have at IIM Lucknow, we always try to involve practitioners in a very bigger way through workshop sessions, guest lectures, and also this kind of collaboration. Almost all campuses now, although they are doing with the academicians, they should do more with practitioners and industry. Like Pritiji has told, internship is also a very important thing. We always tell our doctoral students, don't go to these marketing companies, you go to research industries, because you are doing research, PhD research, so you will learn more in research industry. So there should be more continuous dialogue, conferences, workshops, webinars. These are very important things where today, for example, there are some academics. Earlier, when we were doing physical conferences, although you have seen practitioners, academicians all come to the conference. We have a very good discussion, deliberation, and also practitioners started writing research papers, which academicians understand. Always, earlier days, academicians only write papers. Academia and industry can collaborate together, write publications that has some theoretical and marketing implications. So basically, there should be synergy between academia, which is happening in Western countries. Unfortunately, in India, for example, when in our own marketing research book, Cantor has helped a lot and several research industry professionals. But earlier, when we approached, we do not get a very good response that somebody will snatch away the data and everything. Now, when these are featured in the book, real value has come, where students read that these kind of established companies, marketing research companies, that they are doing good research, and also those who are real tomorrow who will be the company's CEO or something like that. Our marketing, our students, they understand also these research companies are doing something in India. Research is going on. So this kind of vocabulary can be taken place when academia industry will really make correspondence and everything.
Well, thank you for those comments. And I think with that, I would like to close this session. We are 7 minutes past our time, but we did start about 10 minutes late. So I've still kept the time.
Okay, sir.
And I want to thank all our panelists for very insightful comments. I personally took down a lot of notes based on what was said. And I think all the panelists were right on target, gave us some very good insights. And thank you, you people in the audience. Thank you for coming. We had very good attendance. One time I looked at and we have 59 participants. Thank you. And Satya, also kindly thank you, Dean, for his welcome and his participation in this session.
We take one snapshot.
Okay. So thank you one and all. And with that, I will bring this session to a close. You all have a very good day.
So
thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Just stay for one minute. We'll take a snapshot. Please switch on your camera. We'll take a screenshot of the session. And also, Isan, please take. And we are very much thankful to our sponsors, LIC and SBI, and also this network partner, Pearson, Academy of Indian Marketing, MRSI, Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute, for all of their support to make this workshop really successful during the time of COVID. It is very difficult to manage this kind of workshop. And also, I request now Isan to take the snapshot and make the.
Oh, I think we all can just turn on our cameras.
Yeah.
And,
Should we continue smiling or is it done?
Yeah.
It is just that.
So you want to show the music? Yeah.
So we are just thanking all the sponsors here. And thank you for being with us right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
No, thank you, Mr. Karan Khanna from RKS BBDO for coordinating for LIC, and we also thank Mr. Srinivas Tula for joining as the speaker. SBI and LIC both have been the single sponsor of the event. Shruti Kapoor from Pearson, thank you for all the participants have been provided the online access to all the Pearson materials. And from VMware, they have conducted a very special machine learning workshop as the first opening session for the 3-day event. Thank you, MRSI and Sandeep sir, for continuously providing support for all our events. I think MRSI, the entire community of MRSI has always been helpful to collaborate with us. Dr. Prachi Kaul from Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute for collaborating and circulating all the important announcements and initiatives with CME. I think Jayan Shah sir is right here. He has joined the session. Thank you for AIM and Professor Jagdish Sheth and everyone in the entire AIM community for collaborating with us. And apart from that, we also want to thank all our past partners for the past events. Kantar, Datamatics, and Dilberto, SBI, LIC have already, Purple Audacity have always been helpful for us. So thank you very much. And we all be looking forward for all of you joining for our upcoming events. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
आप भी अग्री करेंगे SBI is the banker to every Indian. बाकी बातों पर लगे रहो. मुंबई चेन्नई. हाय, आप अपनी पहली सैलरी कैसे खर्च करेंगे? डेफिनेटली कुछ पैसे इन्वेस्ट करना चाहूंगा.
मैं अपने छोटे भाई के लिए स्मार्टफोन खरीदूंगी.
मैं अपनी पहली सैलरी अपने पापा मम्मी को देना चाहूंगा.
मुझे ट्रैवलिंग का बहुत शौक है.
मैं लाइफ इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी लूंगा क्योंकि वो मेरे और मेरी फैमिली की सिक्योरिटी के लिए जरूरी है.
Hello, everyone. Are the participants still here with us? There's a small announcement. So the session will start from 10 a.m. tomorrow. The first session will be of Sharmila Das ma'am from Purple Audacity. Their team will be conducting. Okay, and before that, Professor Dash will take a half-an-hour special analytics session from 9:30. He'll be using SPSS to demonstrate what was, I think, a short portion was remaining from today's his basic and advanced quantitative technique session. So tomorrow, first session will be 9:30 to 10 by Professor Dash. Then Sharmila Das ma'am will take session. After that, Avinash will be taking the NVO session. And all the supporting resources have already been uploaded on the Google Drive. Okay. And I hope everyone has installed NVO also. So in case any issues, just we can update each other in the WhatsApp group and over email as well. For those who have not got their Pearson ebook still activated, I think it's weekend off at Pearson. I just got a call. By Monday, it will be activated. In the meantime, you can use our own user account and password. We'll be sending you. We have 1 or 2 spare ones at CME. So meanwhile, all the 3 people who did not get to use the book can use in the meantime. Okay, the student resources and the instructors resources have already been shared as well. Okay, so thank you so much. Looking forward for tomorrow's session from 9:30. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, good night. Chalo,